Today we're going to talk about something that is truly very special to me. Because the game we're going to discuss isn't just a newly announced shooter. It's a new entry in a series that holds a very important place in my gaming life. Yes, today we're going to talk about Gears of War, E-Day. We'll take a closer look at why this game has created so much excitement, why it's important for the history of the series, and what kind of story that terrifying day we call Emergence Day might offer us. We'll also go through all the details we know about the game so far, one by one. But before we start the video, I need to say one small thing. There's actually a pretty large audience that follows the channel and watches the videos all the way to the end, but still isn't subscribed. If you enjoy these kinds of game analyses, news, and theories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It genuinely gives me huge support to keep producing more content like this. If you're ready, let's begin. There are some game series that become unforgettable, not just because they're good, but because of the mark they leave on a player's life. For me, Gears of War is exactly that kind of series. Because my connection with this series isn't just about the action, the story, or the characters. For me, Gears of War is also the place where my gaming habits changed. There was a time when I didn't enjoy playing games with a gamepad at all. In fact, if possible, I wanted to play every game with a keyboard and mouse. But Gears of War was such a series that it didn't force me into it. It slowly got me used to it instead. There's also the emotional side of it. I'm someone who has replayed and finished every game in the Gears of War series at least 4 or 5 times from the beginning. That actually shows very clearly how attached I am to this series. So when Gears of War, E-Day was announced, the excitement it created for me was much more than the normal excitement of a new game, because this game offers the chance to return to the most critical day of a universe I love, and one of E-Day's strongest aspects actually starts right here. This game takes us back to the very beginning of the story, the day when everything broke apart. The day we call Emergence Day is not just the start of a massive war in the Gears universe, it's also the day humanity was caught completely unprepared. The balance of the world collapsed, and fear truly began. That's why this game doesn't feel like an ordinary prequel. Because what's being told here isn't just a simple, what happened before story. What's being told here is the central trauma of the entire series. Sarah was already worn down by the Pendulum Wars, and the idea of the Locusts suddenly emerging from underground and turning the planet into hell is genuinely terrifying. And I think the real strength of E-Day lies exactly in its potential to make the player feel that sense of helplessness. On top of that, the fact that we'll see young versions of Marcus Fenix and Dom Santiago during this period is incredibly important on its own, because we've known these characters for years, but we've always seen them in the forms shaped by war. That toughness, that exhaustion, the weight of those losses had already become part of who they were. But now we're going to see younger, more raw, more vulnerable versions of these characters, and that could add a completely different emotional layer to the story. Especially seeing how a traumatic event like Emergence Day changes Marcus and Dom could be very powerful from a character perspective. It's also a great decision that John DiMaggio and Carlos Ferro are returning to their roles, because even hearing the voices of these characters alone brings nostalgia. So what we might get here isn't just a new story, but also a much more personal narrative that dives into the origins of familiar characters. One of the things I've liked the most so far is the Coalition's intention to return to the roots of the series with this game. Because when most people think of Gears of War, they think of intense action. But in the early games of the series, there was actually a very strong horror atmosphere as well. When you first encountered the Locust, you weren't just seeing enemies. You were seeing something unknown, savage, and truly threatening to humanity. Dark streets, collapsed cities, the feeling that enemies could appear from anywhere at any moment. These were very important parts of Gears' identity. And in the statements made about E-Day, the emphasis on that horror tone feels like a very smart decision to me. Because for this game to succeed, it's not enough to just offer good combat. It also needs to make you feel the chaos, panic, and brutality of that first day. If it can achieve that, E-Day could truly become a game that returns to the spirit of the series. Even on the trailer side, I think we can clearly feel what kind of game this wants to be. The first reveal for Gears of War. E-Day didn't try to create a huge spectacle in the traditional sense. Instead, it chose a tone that was more emotional, darker, and heavier. Seeing young Marcus nearly helpless against a Locust drone, the destroyed state of the city, and Dom's appearance gave me a clear feeling. This game doesn't just want to stand out with explosions, weapons, and massive battle scenes. It also wants to show the human side breaking apart. And that was always one of the things that made the Gears universe powerful. War wasn't just about huge battles. You could feel the destruction it left behind on people as well. The EA trailer seems to move exactly along that emotional path. The choice of music in the trailer also doesn't feel accidental to me. Mad World already holds a very special place in the history of the Gears series, but the version used here being heavier, slower, and darker summarizes the tone of the game very well. Because it seems clear that this game isn't going to make only surface-level references to the old Gears spirit. It's trying to rebuild that spirit for real. And that gives me hope. Because in some return projects, Nostalgia is used as the main tool, but the substance ends up empty. Here, at least from what we've seen so far, it doesn't look like the goal is simply to remind people of the past. It looks more like trying to recreate that old feeling with today's technology and storytelling. And that's exactly what matters. Of course, on the gameplay side, we still don't have clear gameplay footage yet, which naturally creates some question marks. But with a deeply rooted series like Gears, we can more or less guess what the core structure will be. Third-person camera, the cover system, heavy but satisfying weapon handling, intense firefights that constantly make you feel close to death, that's all likely to return. And honestly, those are the things that make Gears what it is. But the real question here is how much the Coalition will modernize it. Because today, simply bringing back old mechanics exactly as they were is not enough. The game needs to preserve the classic feeling while also delivering a smoother, more refined, and more powerful experience for modern players. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. I want to see a game that carries the soul of old Gears but reaches modern standards in terms of controls, animation, fluidity, and atmospheric power. The Unreal Engine 5 detail is also extremely important because of this. If used correctly, this engine could push E-Day's atmosphere to an incredible level, especially city destruction, smoke, dark environmental design, creature detail, and the chaotic visual feeling of war play a huge role in a game like this. Gears of War has always been a series that stood out with its visual power. In every generation, it delivered technically impressive work. With E-Day, we're basically going to see the first big Unreal Engine 5 test for this series. If the Coalition truly uses the technology not just for graphical spectacle but also to strengthen atmosphere and gameplay feel, this game could deliver a war experience that doesn't just look good, it actually feels heavy. That's what I'm most curious about. But alongside all this excitement, there are naturally some concerns too. Because when a series you love comes back, expectations also become very high. One of my biggest fears is that the game's dark tone might remain only at the level of the trailers. In other words, the marketing might show something extremely heavy, intense, and horror-focused. But the actual game could fall back into a safer, more straightforward action structure. That's something I really wouldn't want. If E-Day is truly about Emergence Day, then the game should constantly make the player feel a sense of threat and instability. The day the Locust first emerged should feel genuinely traumatic. If that feeling isn't built properly, the game could still be technically good, but feel like it's missing its soul. Another question mark is the multiplayer side. So far we haven't seen anything very clear about it. And honestly, in a series like Gears of War, that detail isn't small. Because Gears wasn't loved only for its campaign, it also built a very strong identity in multiplayer for years. That heavy movement system, the tense close-range battles, the tactical fights built around cover, and that competitive feeling were all important parts of the series. So even if E-Day is heavily focused on story, how the multiplayer side will be handled will be a big deal for players. My main excitement is definitely on the story side, but I still think a strong multiplayer mode could significantly extend the life of this game. At the same time, one of E-Day's biggest advantages is that it arrives not just as a new game, but also as an opportunity to redefine the identity of the series. Because sometimes, long-running franchises reach a point where they begin to lose track of what they really want to be. While trying to become bigger, they sometimes push their core identity into the background. There were moments where we felt that in Gears of War 2, but E-Day seems to be doing the opposite. It feels like a project asking the question, why did we love this series in the first place? Marcus and Dom, Emergence Day, the first shock of the Locust threat, the dark tone, the horror feeling, and the hopelessness of war. All of these are the fundamental pillars of Gears. If the Coalition can bring these elements together in a solid way, E-Day won't just be a successful return. It will also show a new generation why this series has always been special. Personally, the possibility I love the most is that this game might show the relationship between Marcus and Dom in a much more emotional and brutal context. Because what made these two characters beloved wasn't just that they fought together. It was the brotherhood between them. In the later games of the series, we already saw how powerful that bond was. But now we're going back to the very beginning of that bond, when everything was just starting to break apart. So in this game, we might not only witness the Locust invasion, but also watch how Marcus and Dom transform as characters. If the story handles this relationship well, E-Day could become a game remembered not only for its action, but also for its emotional weight. And I think that possibility is one of the most exciting aspects of the game. The timing of the release is also very interesting. The fact that it aligns with the 20th anniversary of the series makes the symbolic value of this game even bigger. A Gears game released in such a year simply cannot be ordinary. That's why I believe the Coalition is fully aware of that responsibility. Because this isn't just a new project, it's also a responsibility toward the past, toward players' memories, and toward the legacy of the series. If you take a franchise as iconic as Gears of War and tell the story of its most defining breaking point, you can't do it halfway. That's why I think the team is aware of the pressure and wants to release the game in the strongest possible state. And honestly, the fact that it may have shifted toward 2026 might not be a bad thing. If that extra time reflects on the game's quality, I'm more than willing to wait. For me, the core of the matter is simple: Gears of War. E-Day isn't just a game I'm curious about, it's a game I'm genuinely waiting for from the heart, because Gears of War has a special place in my gaming life. Beyond being the series that made me enjoy playing with a gamepad, it's also one of the rare franchises I've replayed again and again over the years. So when I look at E-Day, I'm not just looking at technical details or trailers. I'm also looking at my own gaming past. And honestly, it's been a long time since I've been this personally excited about a game. Now, the biggest question that remains is whether this game can truly meet expectations. Because the bigger the nostalgia surrounding a game, the bigger the risk of disappointment becomes. And when we're talking about a series like Gears of War that players have built emotional connections with for years, things become even more delicate. People don't just want good graphics or big explosions. Everyone wants to feel that old sensation again. They want to feel the pressure while running from cover to cover, experience the terror of the Locust's first appearance, and feel the weight of Marcus and Dom fighting side by side again. I think the real test for E-Day will begin right there. At the same time, this game could also become a very important entry point for a new generation of players. Even though Gears of War has been a huge franchise for years, the audience that experienced the series at its peak mostly consists of longtime players. With E-Day, an entirely new generation could step into this universe for the first time, and the fact that it's an origin story is a huge advantage in that regard, because people will be able to enter this world without needing to know every previous game in the series. Emergence Day is already the most critical starting point of the universe, so beginning here could feel like a very natural experience for new players. One of the things I most want to see is the war feeling truly massive and destructive, because the event we call Emergence Day is one of the most terrifying days in the Gears universe. For that reason, the game needs to make you feel it, not just through a few emotional scenes, but through its entire structure. The collapse of cities, the panic among civilians, the brutality of the Locust's first attacks, soldiers and ordinary people being caught completely unprepared. All of these things need to be deeply embedded into the atmosphere of the game. Another expectation I have is this: I really hope the game doesn't simply lean on the past and play it safe. Yes, returning to the roots of the series is very important. Yes, seeing younger versions of Marcus and Dom is incredibly exciting. Yes, the darker tone and horror elements fit perfectly with the spirit of the franchise. But alongside all that, the game also needs to be bold. In other words, it shouldn't just try to be like old Gears, it should also build its own identity. So my feeling about this game is very clear. I'm genuinely waiting for it with great excitement. Because Gears of War has never been just another series I played. It's a series I've formed a connection with over the years. It's the franchise that made me enjoy playing with a gamepad, the one whose characters stayed in my memory, and the universe that pulled me in again and again with its atmosphere. And now, with E-Day, we're getting the chance to return to the most important day in that universe. If this game truly delivers the darkness, emotion, horror, and that classic Gears heaviness it promises, then for me it won't just be a good game, it will be much more than that. Maybe even the big comeback I've been waiting for all these years. And to be completely honest, I'm already more than ready for that possibility. Now, I'm really curious about what you think. What do you think about Gears of War, E-Day? Do you think this game can truly bring back the old dark spirit of the series? Does seeing young Marcus and Dom excite you? Is increasing the horror tone the right choice? How important do you think multiplayer is? And most importantly, can this game meet expectations? Be sure to write all your thoughts in the comments so we can talk about it together. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new videos.